Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Mr. Fix-It channel. I'm putting my Polaris 400 engine back together, starting with the crankshaft. Stay tuned.
I was sitting out there in the shed one evening, not doing too much of nothing, just kind of staring at the wall.
Alright, got my parts in, got a connecting rod kit, some piston rings. So I've never actually rebuilt one of these before. I get the gist of it. I've watched some YouTube videos, you know, like we all do. Looks pretty straightforward. You just got to push that pin out. This comes apart, and then you push it back together, and then you have a special jig to realign it. I don't have the jig, but what I do have is a lathe. So hopefully my lathe will help me get this back into alignment, because that's really the only issue with this. As long as this presses out fine. I'm going to take a few measurements first, right across where the pin goes. Looks like 2.4 inches. I'm going to go 180 degrees. I'm going to measure it back here. So that's 2.388. So that's telling me that this thing's already out of alignment just a little bit. Might as well get a measurement on the inside here just in case. Let's say it's 5.2. Okay, so those three measurements should be able to get me in the ballpark. Now I'm not going to go into any great detail here since this is my first time. I don't want to mislead you guys or give you any wrong information. But I did put this in the lathe and I did measure 2 thousandths. It looks like it's about 2.5 thousandths out. It's out just a little bit. I know this one's kind of hard to see. It's pretty old. So I got about 2.5 thou. So if I can get it within that or better, then should be good. And it was running, so as long as I can get it back in with that tolerance. I did measure the slop in the connecting rod, and it was moving about 4 thousandths of an inch, and there should be, I think I read in the manual, 5/10, which, you know, that's like nothing. Like you can't feel it move, so definitely needs rebuilt. So let's go ahead and press this thing apart. I got to support, if I want to press down on this side, I got to support this side of the crankshaft. I don't want to support it here because that's going to, you know, push it like that. So I got to slide something in between here and support it from back here. Push that pin out. I did not realize how much this actually flexed until I watched it and fast forward. Yeah, that was in there tight. Jesus. Alright, I was a little worried I got this too close together, but it seemed to work out pretty good. This is a 10 thousandths feeler gauge. Gotta get in between the, hold on, there's suction in there because of the oil. So I can just, I mean ever so just put a 10 thou in there. Let's try 9. Yeah, I'd say that's 9 thousandths. So it's in spec and it's on the tighter end. and I kind of like that, I think. Ooh, it rolls nice. So let's see how far off we are as far as alignment. Now I haven't done any aligning to this, so let's see where we're at. Okay, with the crank pin at 12, that's zeroed. That's basically zeroed. Not too bad. I think a few whacks with a hammer, and we'll see what happens. Now I'm not too sure how hard I need to hit this thing, so I'm just going to kind of hit it and stick it back in there and check it again and see what that did. I marked my high spot there. See if that did anything. I'm obviously going to have to hit this way harder. Alright, let's see what that did. I'm going to screw around with this for a bit, and I'll come back to you if anything good happens. I know it's kind of dark. I got that window in the background there. It's kind of screwing up the lighting, but hopefully you can see that. I got 3 on this side and 1 on that side. So altogether that's 4. I don't know what they mean by 5, if that's total or not. There we go, now we can see what's going on. Alright, this one's just a hair over 0. This one's pretty much zeroed. See what we got. That's almost exactly the way it was before I took it apart and rebuilt it. Alright, I think I know when to leave well enough alone. It's within a thou. Alright, I think it's going to run. So what advice can I give you? The best advice I can give you is watch all the videos you can find on this on YouTube before you get started. You're going to have at least a 20-ton or a 30-ton press to do this job. You're going to need a few extra tools and a few special skills, but this job isn't really that hard to do, so don't be afraid to do this job. Just wanted to show you the damage to the old connecting pin. Yeah, can you see that there? That was about 4 thousandths of play right there. It's only on 1/2 of it. Who knows what this engine went through before I got it. I'm pretty sure this thing was blown up and kind of half fixed back together the way it looks like. So this thing's probably going to run better than it ever has. So that's always a plus. Now in order to get that bearing out in there, I made this. That should grab a hold of that bearing and pull it out of there. It's not pretty, but it should work. They make tools that will pull out a bearing in a blind hole. So just search blind hole bearing or whatever tool and you should find what you need. I'm just using Scotch-Brite and some soap and water. I guess you could say this is a mechanic's version of doing dishes. Alright, because I'm using a different case than this crankshaft came out of, I need to check the end play. And how you do that is you measure from the bottom of the bearing surface all the way down in there. You set it on that lip right there. I got a straight edge across the case, and I'm going to measure from there to there. I'm going to do this at both case halves. The next measurement you're going to take is you're going to take 2 of your 3 crankshaft bearings and you're going to measure those. Write that down. Put your crank in the freezer and that bearing will just slide right on. And we'll let that come back up to room temperature before I take any more measurements. And the next thing you're going to measure is from this bearing surface to the outer race of that bearing. Now once you've measured the case and you've added those two numbers together and you subtracted whatever straight edge you were using, and then you measured those two bearings and the distance between there and there, you'll take this measurement and this measurement, add them together, then you'll take the measurements from the case minus your straight edge and you'll add those together. Then you'll subtract the numbers you got from the crank measurements with the numbers that you got from the case measurements, and that'll give you your crankshaft side to side in play. And the book says somewhere between 6 to 18 thousandths. They do offer shims. I'm not sure where you can get these shims, if they're even available anymore. I only have two. So those will go on this side of the crankshaft, you know, the clutch side, before you put your bearings on. Alright, I heated the lower case half up. Crank's been in the freezer. They should just drop together. The bearing's a little loose on there, so I gotta keep mine for that. I got a metal plate on the bench so I don't set my tabletop on fire or anything. Drop those in together. Now I'll go get this one warming up. Drop the balance shaft bearing in there. Uh-oh. That didn't go as planned. I'm just going to take it over to the press now. Alright, I do realize that my workbench is a cluster, jumboed up mess, but this is just how I roll, so please bear with any debris or detritus you see in the background. So I'm going to put some anaerobic gasket maker on this side of the case half. I'm going to go warm up that side of the case half, and then we'll put these two together. Alright, this thing's hot now. Let's try to slip this on. "17 foot-pounds in a crisscrossing pattern. These two 10mm head bolts here get torqued to 7 foot-pounds. Now I do apologize. My camera was playing a little prank on me and decided to not let me know that the memory card was full, so I lost the footage of me installing this collar and the O-ring on top of that bearing. So I took my two-stroke oil and I oiled the bearing, the shaft, and the O-ring. There's an O-ring that looks like this that goes on the shaft against the bearing, and then the collar has a bevel-sided edge on one side that goes towards the O-ring. Slide that on, and you might have to tap it into place. It's kind of tight. Next I'm going to put the crankshaft seal in. Now I'm going to use some anaerobic sealant on the outside edge of this seal. Just a little bit now, don't go friggin' crazy with this stuff. So just go flush with the case here. Okay, now I'm going to put the seal on this side, but first I'm going to put some oil in the bearing and on the shaft. Now there's two bearings on this side, so get some oil in there. Now get your other seal. This is the one that looks odd. You got two the same that go on the other side, and this one with this lip on it goes on this side. So same thing, put the sealant on it. Don't go freaking crazy. Alright, that's it. Crankshaft assembly is done. Ouch, that's sharp. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and install the balancer next. Now I did not replace this bearing because this bearing's good. You have to press this apart and put your new bearing on, and then when you press it back together you got to line up these two marks right here. But I didn't do that because this bearing's still good, so I'm not going to waste my time. So again, put some oil on this. Put some oil in that bearing down there. Slide this guy in. Can't forget this guy. Yeah, you want to have that in there before you get that all the way down in place. I put these bolts back in for this retainer plate. 7 foot-pounds. Yeah, click. Alright, next I'm going to install this Woodruff key in the crankshaft here. And let's put a little bit of oil right here. Then I'm going to slide the balancer shaft drive gear into place. Don't forget to line up your dots here. I'm going to get this keyway pretty square in that shaft, otherwise it'll just push it out of the way. Come on, work with me here. I'll have to put a little bit of grease in it to hold it in place. There it went. And yep, a little more oil. Alright, on this side there is a washer. Alright, it's got like a sharp edge on one side and smooth on the other. I'm going to put the sharp edge down towards that gear. Another O-ring like this. That's going to go down onto that washer, and you can put some oil on it. And you have another one of these collars slash spacers. It's got a beveled side that goes down towards the O-ring. Yep, I caught that. Ha ha ha. Let me know if you've seen that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take this bearing and these seals out of the water pump housing. So I just got it set up on there like that. I'm going to take a punch, I'm going to slip it inside here and grab the inside race of that bearing. I'm going to drive it out the back. Then I'm going to flip this over. Alright, I got an 18mm socket here. This is a 3/8 drive. See if we can push these two seals out. I pulled the studs out of this so I could clean this gasket surface up real good. I'm going to clean inside the bore real good and we'll reassemble. Alright, let's reassemble this water pump housing. Got us a new bearing. Go ahead and push this guy into place here. Okay, I'm going to take the first seal. I'm going to put the open side down towards that bearing. And then the next one, I'm going to put the open side facing up. I'll put just a little bit of oil in here. Alright, I'm going to put a little bit of oil on that shaft. And then we can slide this thing down on there. Water pump on. Now we got a flat washer. And then we got a lock washer. And then a nut. Now you can do this way, you just got to be very careful. I'm going to jam these two gears together with this pry bar and I'm going to tighten this. Just be careful. Now this gets torqued to 7 foot-pounds. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and assemble this side of the cover. Get our bearing in here. This has been in the freezer. We'll get our third crankshaft seal, and again we'll put some sealant on the outside, just a little bit, don't go freaking crazy. And we're going to put the lip, or the open side, down towards the bearing. You just want that flush with the case. We'll put a little bit of oil on the seal. We'll put a little bit of oil in this bearing. Okay, that's ready to go on. We'll set this aside and we'll go ahead and get our water pump gasket in place. Okay, now I'm going to use some black RTV on this gasket. I'm only going to use a little bit. Don't go freaking crazy. And I'm just going to take and I'm just going to rub this in to the gasket. We only want a very light thin coat on this, both sides. Okay, and we'll put this in place. I'm just going to take and put a little bit of grease on this gasket mating surface here. Just a tiny bit. And what this will do is if I ever have to come back in here and work on this again, take this apart, hopefully this grease will let the gasket come off clean and I won't have to scrape this side of the engine. Alright, you gotta kind of tuck this under the water pump there. A little bit of oil on this collar. I'm going to slide this on, and you got to line up this water pump and it's got to feed through these holes. Alright, the lip of the seal is catching on this collar, so I'm going to pull it out. And then we can slip this back in there. Go ahead and get the 4 nuts on for the water pump here. Alright, this stud sticking out right here, it's too small to put a flanged nut on like this one, so you need a nut that does not have a flange on it, which that's not it. So you need a nut that doesn't have a flange on it, and that goes right there. I'm just going to take and snug these down. And we'll go ahead and put these 12mm bolts back in here. 17 foot-pounds in a crisscrossing pattern. Seven foot-pounds. And you can't get a socket on that one, so you just gotta guess. Click. Alright, now we can install this castle nut. Remember, this is left-handed thread, so we got to loosen it to tighten it. So this tower of crap here is my socket for tightening that nut. So this gets torqued down to 29 to 44. I'm going to shoot for 40. It's a tricky one because you got to hold the crankshaft still while you torque this sucker. And how I held the crankshaft is I stuck the plastic handle of my ratchet in there on the crank and against the case right there. Well, the inside of the starter was a nightmare, so I took it all apart, cleaned everything out, re-greased the bearing, cleaned up the brushes. So hopefully I can get a little bit more use out of this thing before it has to be replaced again. So we got a gasket here. Go ahead and stick this starter in place. Alright, you got a short one and a long one. Long one goes in that hole, short one goes in this hole. These get torqued to 7 foot-pounds. So I can already see this video is getting very long, so I'm going to cut this episode here. We'll pick up next week, finish putting the engine back together, and finally try to get this thing back on the trails. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and don't be afraid to fix it. Thanks for watching.